Good morning, Hockey Nation fans and Detroit Red Wings fans. The pain continues. Since the trade deadline where the Detroit Red Wings were sellers, they moved out an important piece in Philip Hronek, making a decision on their cap structure and on the defensive side of their team, locking in Jake Wallman, Ali Mata. We know they're stuck with basically a no movement clause with Ben Sherratt. That made Hronek and his expiring contract, even though he's RFA expendable. Since that time, as long as with the movement of, did they move Sundqvist too? Did I see that right? Did I miss that? Did I see that they moved Oscar Sundqvist? I could have sworn they did. Am I just in denial on this? Yeah, they moved Oscar Sundqvist, which I totally overlooked, to the Minnesota Wild. The Minnesota Wild loaded up on this trade deadline. So basically, with all those parts moving out, Vrana, Sundqvist, Hronek, Tyler Bertuzzi, this team is on a 6-game losing streak. And last night, it continued. That made it 6 against the Philadelphia Flyers. So we've gone from having like winning streaks to a really long, painful losing streak here. And this seems to be part of the plan. And his presser after the trade deadline, Stevie Yzerman said he was never going to be a buyer. He was always going to either stand pat or be a seller. And he made the determination. He also indicated this after those Ottawa games that they had a long way to go. So he did not want an aberration here. He wants long-term success that leads to a Stanley Cup. And that seems to be the focus. It is the focus. We see teams like the New York Rangers, even now Ottawa, they've leapt over New Jersey. I mean, these are teams that are in the same boat or worse than Detroit. And they've just leapt right over them. In terms of prospects, development, talent, go down the list. And I think he made that assessment. I know he made that assessment when they lost those 2 games in Ottawa. We knew those were critical games. Ottawa continues to win and playoff push. 5-game winning streak, and he was correct there. So we're seeing a 6-game losing streak since that time, adding up, starting with the Tampa loss, 2 losses in Ottawa, and on and on and on. Well, last night was no different, and Saturday night was no different. David Perron starts off the scoring, so they seemed to score in the first. This happened in the prior game too, but then it was all Philadelphia. Carter Hart making 25 saves. Being outscored 27-9 is crazy, and they've lost some really important pieces, specifically Hronek. Well, even Sundqvist. Like Sundqvist was, I thought they would keep him, but we know he's unrestricted, so they get some assets back from Minnesota at the playoff push, and away you go. But I really like Sundqvist. He was an important part of kind of that third line play. But, now it's time to look to the future, it seems. You got Jonathan Bergeron in there. Pius Suter's been playing pretty well. Lucas Raymond's back. Fabry has been contributing. Zadina's back. And we know they got dry powder in the AHL with Oscar Soderblom or Ulmer Soderblom. Good morning, Lucky. It is a rough day to be a Detroit Red Wing, and I just don't see this pain ending. I think Stevie Yzerman absolutely said in his press conference that the Ottawa games highlighted how much work the Detroit Red Wings had to do, and that's what he's doing. He's loading up on assets. In the meantime, the losing continues. Not much to say in this game. 1 goal. 944 save percentage for Ville Husso. He is not the problem. But when you lose your number 2 defenseman, Hronek, that hurts. Now, Ben Sherratt definitely should be capable of, anchoring a second pair, but he is not a right shot defenseman. So I think you're replacing a right shot with a left shot. That never works, in my opinion. Interesting times. So that was the first loss. Well, the first loss we're going to cover was yesterday, but then we know on Saturday night they also lost the New York Islanders. They stuck to the plan. That is it. Load up on more assets. That's the game plan. So on Saturday, I believe Hellberg was in this game. And he faced 36 shots. So just below 900 save percentage. Dylan Larkin got off, things again, getting the first goal of the game, not until the second period from Mo Sider and Robbie Fabry, but that would be it. No more offense and really no more defense. You're seeing what happens when you trade your number 2 defenseman, guys. Yeah, Tampa too, right? It's a really good question. We know he made some really aggressive moves. He signed like 5-6 players last offseason. I'm not sure if we'd have to take a look at, it's a good point. Like, well, who are the unrestricted free agents that are available? Some of them might be his own, like Tyler Bertuzzi. Do you bring back Tyler Bertuzzi? I don't think so. I think they're eyeing to the future. They're looking at the Marco Kaspers. They're looking at Elmer Soderblom, continued development of Rasmussen, continued development of Lucas Raymond, Mo Sider. That's the future. But you got to say, like, Ben Chiarot has struggled all year. You trade Philip Hronek, and now suddenly you're letting in a ton of goals. That's the difference. It doesn't take much. That's what's happening. Interesting that they called up Alex Chiasson, by the way, an NHL veteran. They didn't call up Soderblom. They called up Chiasson. He's a big guy, can play fourth line minutes. He can score a little bit. He scored quite a bit of goals in the NHL, including 22 in Edmonton, 11 there that year, 12, 11, 13. So he's a pretty reliable offensive player. He had 13 last year for the Vancouver Canucks. So this makes sense. Not going to help them. Not going to help them switch this up. Doesn't seem like it. So where do you go from here? I guess what you do is you look to the draft. Just a couple of interesting comments. Did you notice Jonathan Quick got his 25 save win for Vegas? He was still below a 900 save percentage in that game. I think he only faced like 20 shots or something. Oh, 25, sorry. He faced, can't count. But there was something, if I looked at it, yeah, he had an 893 save percentage. So he faced 28 shots. But he gets the win. They have a very motivated guy there in Jonathan Quick in Vegas. That is going to be something interesting to watch, I think. I am pretty confident they're going to be in the playoffs with a guy that just wants to win the Stanley Cup. And he has done it before. And I believe he might be a difference maker. Timo Meier scored last night for New Jersey in their 5-4 win over Arizona. Thought that was interesting. Colorado having a little bit of a hard time. This was a rough game, which you were referencing, 6-0. And wasn't there a benching in the prior game of their top players? So that didn't work out very well. Something's going on in Tampa. You got to think, though, they're going to dial it in. How does Jesperi Kotkaniemi get a 5-point night? I think you are correct. I think that as many improvements as he made, this team has been very, very competitive, but not good enough to be in the playoffs. And we kind of guessed that. So how do you improve? I mean, the ideal scenario is you've signed Dylan Larkin to a long-term contract as your number 1 center, really. Is he, how does Dylan Larkin match up? Is he a number 1 center? I always kind of question that. He's a point a game. So in this NHL, that might be a number 1 center, but that's not Connor McDavid. That's not Nathan McKinnon. There are several of those guys with the potential to be that caliber of player in Adam Fantilli, but I think he's raw and a little further away than from being that impact player. But he's big and talented. And then Leo Carlson, who I really like. Those are the best candidates in this coming draft. They're not going to go past picks 2 and 3, though, in my opinion. Michkov, I've seen in some picks drop to 5. I think that's shocking to me, but it's just because of the Russian KHL situation. It's got to be. He's super talented. Normally, he would be top 2, in my opinion. Maybe not. I really like Leo Carlson. And then Zach Benson's back, dealt himself back in with absolutely phenomenal performance. Are any of those guys going to be Dylan Larkin or better at any point? Leo Carlson, I think, could be, and Adam Fantilli could be. You need that type of player. You're not going to sign that type of player in the offseason, are you? I don't think so. I feel like every other move is a depth move. And if your ceiling is Dylan Larkin, how good does this team really get? Are you concentrating on the wings? And no pun intended, like left and right wing for your massive improvement in the lineup? It's kind of interesting. Marco Kasper, is he that guy? I'm not sure. Well, you say that. And they trade Filip Hronek, a 25-year-old defenseman that can score 10 goals a year and get 40 points. And they trade him for picks that will not be on the lineup next year or the year after, in my opinion, unless they do something really, really special. And there's no defensemen in this draft, in my opinion, that are that great. I mean, I think the first defenseman that will go around 10, 11, 12 in the draft. So to your point, and they already have Ben Sherratt. If you look at the salary structure, part of the reasoning of moving out Filip Hronek was because of the salary structure between the top four, that are now the top four, but they're not playing like a top four. Ben Sherratt has not been a top four all year in his play. Olli Mata, $3 million. Jake Wallman, $3 million. What's Sherratt, $5 million, $6 million? And then you're going to have to pay Mo Seider at some point, but he's got one more year at his entry level. So they're anticipating that. You're going to give Mo Seider 8, 9, 10 mil probably. Depends how much he improves. So then the upside is what? Simon Edmondson legitimately could be, but I think he's raw and still a little ways away. He's playing pretty well in the AHL. He's got good numbers down there. So maybe he's ready next year. William Wallander might be another year away. You still have Albert Johansson. So your upside is probably Simon Edmondson, and maybe that's just the difference. It's weird. I just don't know what moves you can make that will accelerate it. And that's what we're going to wait to find out. What the heck's going on in Tampa? How does Jesperi Kotkaniemi get a 5-point night? These are all burning questions on my mind. Seattle getting back in the win column. Is that 4 games in a row they've now won? And beating Colorado. So if you look at the standings, Carolina, 2 wins in a row, 7-3-0. New Jersey, 7-2-1. This team, you got to start saying, is for real. Rangers struggling to integrate their new players. I think that will come around. You've got Boston, 10-game winning streak. 105 goal differential. This is insane. And they just got better at the deadline. Toronto having a little bit of a hard time integrating their guys. But you got to think that anyone that made those big deals, whoops, we don't want that. Islanders playing okay. Pittsburgh playing not great. Buffalo up and down like a yo-yo. The best hard-charging team are the Ottawa Senators, and that's what kind of put the nail in the Red Wings' coffin, I think, at the trade deadline. And they've been in free fall ever since those 2 losses. There's a significant difference between having a Brady Tkachuk, a Tim Stützle, and we're not even seeing Josh Norris on that team. And now that defense has got Jacob Chychrun, Thomas Chabot, Jake Sanderson. You still don't have Bernard Docker in yet, and you got Zub. So only Seider is in that mix to be as good or better. They're probably better than anyone in Ottawa, but that top 4 is definitely better in Detroit, especially without Hronek. You're comparing those guys to Jake Wallman, Olli Mata, Ben Sherratt. We got 2 retreads and a surprise project. So your upside's got to be Simon Edmondson. There's no defenseman like Simon Edmondson in the upcoming draft. There's some okay offensive potential guys, but they're going to take 2-3 years at least. Maybe 4. So it is what it is. What's next up on the skillet? Well, you got Detroit down in 7th, and that seems to be in free fall. So then what do they got coming up? What's their next win or loss? Unclear. Chicago. If they don't beat Chicago, they're in trouble. The only team worse than Detroit right now is probably Chicago. They have nothing on the board, so that is an opportunity to break this. But maybe you don't care, because what you're seeing is now in this upcoming draft, suddenly they're in the top 12 mix. And Axel Sandin Palika, probably the best defenseman we're seeing right now. Smaller right shot defenseman, smart, good skater, not bad. He would be years away. But if they're in that mix, and anytime you run the draft lottery, they seem to be hitting around 10th. So that's kind of interesting, and we can do that for fun. And then you've got this New York Islanders pick. So if that comes in at 14th, like that's showing, that would be great. If they get a 12th and a 14th, and they get a Riley Heidt or a Colby Barrow or, Gabe Perreault seems to be moving up a little bit. Those are all prospects for the future, but again, not helping next year. So to answer your question, Lucky, I am not sure what significant moves you can make next year. NHL UFAs 2023. Let's see who is up. Well, you got Patrick Kane. You're not going to go that route. You got Ryan O'Reilly. I can't see them going that route. Tarasenko. So you got all these older players. Klingberg, Van Riemsdyk, Pacioretty may not return. Can't see that happening. Pasternak is signed, so Pasta was an RFA anyway. Was he? Or was he a UFA? Yeah, I guess he was UFA. That would have been a nice haul. Matt Dumba. These are not names that are going to change the trajectory of this team. There's just nobody in that mix that's going to fix this. If you go back to Tyler Bertuzzi, and then you're just on the same path. Interesting future. We will look for the results of the Chicago game. Maybe they can pull out a win there. Check out Hockey Nation live tonight. Detroit Red Wings, keep your chin up. There are good players on this team that are young, and that's the key. Jonathan Berggrens, the Michael Rasmussen's getting back in the lineup. Lucas Raymond getting back on track. Simon Edmondson making the jump to the NHL. And then you hope that someone like a William Wallander or an Albert Johansson can come in and make a big impact, because it's not going to be the current top four, maybe only Seider in that mix. They need another goalie probably. Hellberg is not – he's not bad. He's better than Nedeljkovic, but that's still below 900. Right. That's what I'm saying. And then they come out and they go, like 6-0. That shouldn't have backfired. They should have responded with a win. That should have been motivating. Like, why are you benching us? Something's up. That's a long time to have one coach. They've been through a lot of wars together. Hey, Nicholas, we're going to wrap it up here. It has been an interesting ride. Detroit Red Wings in total free fall. They'll get a chance to get a win with Chicago, but the rest of their month is not easy. Trade deadline definitely having an impact. I just don't get the Hronek deal, because I think Philip Hronek was part of the solution. You have two right shot guys that are anchoring the top four, and now you don't. I don't know, the Ben Sherratt thing is your problem. It's not like they're short on cash. You're paying him a lot of money with a no movement clause. So now you see what's happening. They're getting clobbered. 27-6 in 6 games. Is that what it is? All right, kids. Well, have a wonderful day. Keep your chin up. We will focus on the prospects and the draft, I guess. And I don't know if there's anybody in those free agent names that are going to really change the course of this team. In the end, you're hoping that Jonathan Berggren continues his development. Lucas Raymond continues his development. Marco Kasper makes the jump to the NHL and has a big impact. You're hoping Simon Edmondson becomes a legitimate number 1 or 2 type defenseman in the NHL. But that was going to happen anyway. Getting rid of a 25-year-old Philip Hronek who chews up 21 minutes a game and gets you 40 points, and you're seeing 5-on-5, the difference between him and Ben Sherratt. Who's your top 4? Well, in there you got Wallman, Sherratt, and Alimata, who's a retread. Tough. All right, kids. It is what it is. The rebuild continues, and there's nothing in there that compares to what Ottawa has. You could say Mo Seider and Lucas Raymond are the only closest 2 pieces. Jonathan Berggren might be a part of that, but they don't have a Brady Tkachuk. They don't have even a Josh Norris. Interesting. You could argue Dylan Larkin. but he's not Tim Stützle and he's not Brady Tkachuk. That is for sure. And if that's your ceiling, I don't know how this team gets better fast, but Stevie Yzerman will figure it out. But you're right. They're going to have to do something to accelerate this, I think. All right, wonderful. Thank you so much for joining. Please hit likes and subscribes and share this out, and we will see you on Hockey Nation Live tonight.